Well, and welcome to the Suppress Herald. It is Tuesday, the 5th of March, and we are off. It's Super Tuesday, and we're going to be talking about the week past and what's happened in the Suppress Herald and how remember, politics is local, and so is propaganda, and propaganda is starting to flow pretty heavy here in Maine, and our call them local newspapers again taken over by the billionaires. They bought all the newspapers in Maine through their National Trust for Local News. Isn't that a pretty interesting title, National Trust? I don't think that's good. I think it should be more like National Propagandists for Local News. But we're going to start with jumping right in. You know, most of the time I go through the paper and I read articles and I say, yeah, that's just a bunch of horse hockey and, just mild propaganda. But we're into now where we're seeing, and this is in a local newspaper here in Maine and very limited, in the national scope. But this is an Associated Press piece. And, this isn't horse hockey anymore. This is unadulterated, gross, vile, stanky, slimy bullshit. And this is what they're doing now with the election coming up. We're into the season. Today, again, it's Super Tuesday, and things are going to get really intense. And, here we have Trump. Just yesterday, the Supreme Court told Shenna Bellows, our Secretary of State, who just took it upon herself to remove him from the ballot on the primary, and basically the Supreme Court in a unanimous decision. If you lose on a unanimous decision, if the liberal justices side with the rest of the justices, then you should be removed, probably have your law, you know, be stripped of your, if it's a legal precedent, you should be stripped of your, the bar should take away your license. You shouldn't be able to practice. Shannon Bellows should be removed and sent away to do something else because a unanimous decision is basically saying it wasn't even close, and this was. So there's panic in the Biden White House. There's panic in the Democrat Party. There's panic in Obama's house because Obama's been running the Biden White House. We all know that. Susan Rice was planted in the White House on day one, and Obama took up residence in Washington, D.C., first president in history to do so. He's got mansions in Hawaii and Chicago and on Martha's Vineyard, but he chose to buy a big house in Washington, D.C., so that he can keep an eye on old Biden and basically run his third, his, his third time in Congress, or excuse me, in the White House. Basically, his third term is through Biden. And real quick, you see them out now saying that Trump is confused, just like Biden. It's all about relativism for them. And Biden is, you know, gaffe after gaffe after gaffe, lie after lie after lie. And, so now Trump's old too, and he's got gaffes too. I mean, he confuses Biden and Trump or Biden and Obama. And they don't get it. When Trump says the Obama White House, he's talking about exactly what's going on. This is the Obama White House. This is the Obama third term. And that's exactly what he's referring to. They run with that and say, look, he doesn't even know who's in the White House. He's saying Obama's the president. We all know, those that are paying attention, there's something wrong with what's going on with this White House, and that Obama's had his hand in everything from the day that Joe Biden was inaugurated. So here's the filthy, stanky BS that is under the disguise of a article in the paper. And this is just unbelievable that they're going to try and pull this off. But apparently, there are a lot of people that buy this crap, think it tastes good. You know, I call it a crap sandwich, and they actually think it tastes good. Russian disinformation is about immigration. The goal is to erode U.S. support for Ukraine. Russian state media and online accounts tied to the Kremlin have begun pushing misleading and incendiary claims about U.S. immigration. And I'm actually seeing MSNBC and CNN and some of these, you know, call them cable news, cable propaganda, I should say, organizations. It was last night. They're talking about illegal immigrants aren't committing crimes at a higher rate than citizens are. Here's the deal. You can try to play games with data and all of that information. One single crime committed by an illegal immigrant is more than should happen. In other words, they shouldn't even be here. So the crimes shouldn't be committed. We have tens of thousands of crimes being committed by illegal immigrants. Here in Maine, we've got 270 estimated illegal grow facilities by Chinese triads set up. The amount of money those illegal grows are producing for those triads illegally, black market, is more than the state budget for Maine. So don't tell me that illegal immigrants aren't committing crimes. Fentanyl is being distributed, it's being produced, distributed, and now we're finding out that China is behind a lot of it. China sold the cartels in Mexico the machines to make the pills that are embedded with fentanyl that are killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. So don't tell me that immigrants. And then we had a young woman, beautiful young woman in Georgia, murdered by a Venezuelan immigrant. It's they keep saying, it's alleged, and you know, we know it's pretty darn sure when they arrested that person that he committed that brutal crime, murdered a beautiful young woman, and this is happening all over the place. It's almost daily you read about illegal immigrants being arrested for raping children, for murdering people, for robbing people. You have them beating up cops in New York City. It's almost daily we hear about these things. So here you have Russian disinformation about immigration. This is an article that actually claims that the Russians are amplifying the misinformation about our border, about immigration, and that they're cherry picking data. And, this is an actual one of the paragraphs. In social media posts, online videos, and stories on websites, these accounts misstate the impact of immigration, highlight stories about crimes committed by immigrants, and warn of dire consequences if the U.S. doesn't crack down on its border with Mexico. Many are misleading, filled with cherry picked data or debunked rumors. Yeah. We know just walking around town here in Maine, we have entire hotels that were taken over by illegal immigrants, people claiming asylum that in the end, 80 to 90% of them will not meet the requirement for asylum if they ever get before a judge because of the backlog that's been created by opening the borders and letting millions of them come streaming into our country. And so we've got our schools are overrun. Budgets and town budgets are completely upside down. And this year is going to be just a disaster because all the federal free money that was printed and distributed is running out. And so all the school budgets, town budgets, property taxes are going to be exploding here and across the entire country. Schools are overwhelmed. They don't have enough English as a second language teachers. because they have all of these, 30, 40% of classrooms are now non-English speakers, illegal immigrants, children that are flushing into these communities across, Maine of all places. They got to Maine from the Mexican border. Then we find out that the UN, with a, a large percentage of the money that the UN is using, is U.S. taxpayer money, and these nonprofit government, NGOs, non-government organizations, Catholic Charities, and other organizations are spending money overseas to actually buy the plane tickets for these illegal immigrants to fly to Mexico and show up at the border. Then they're picking them up and fly them, bus them, distribute them all over the country. But they're actually giving them plane tickets in Africa to fly here, in Europe, Eastern Europe to fly here, in China to fly here. They're actually out there recruiting illegal immigrants. But instead of doing it legally through flying them into an airport where they go through customs and immigration and are processed, they're flying them into Mexico. Why is that? It's because they're breaking the law and they're all part of a massive organization. So now it's Russian disinformation. The whole border thing, the whole immigration thing is all a lie. Don't believe your lying eyes is the favorite line of every Democrat. Don't believe your lying eyes. There's no, homeless problem. Those tents, they're just camping out. They're, everything's fine there. Crime, stores closing because they're being the shells are being cleaned out. San Francisco, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, wrecked cities, ruined cities with stores, companies, and people all leaving. And it's just Russian disinformation. This is the biggest load of crap I've ever read in my newspaper locally. But they're going to try and do the Russia, Russia, Russia thing again. This is just unbelievable. So that's the Suppress Herald this week. We also have, I went through the week and looked at the 6 daily for the week from the Suppress Herald, and on the editorial page, and you know that I've tracked, if you follow these podcasts, you know that I've been tracking this for now 2 years and scoring the opinion page, the editorial page, and it's just skewed vastly to the left. And just to give you an idea, this week, in the end, this is just the opinion page. This is not the editorial in the newspaper itself, and there's more there, but I call it Trump bashing. Okay. 6 letters to the editor. Okay. In 6 days, Trump bashing. There were also several editorial articles that also went after Trump. Okay. So, one a day. How many either anti Biden or pro Trump letters? 0. So, basically, they're controlling the narrative at the Suppress Herald and across the country, and they're buying up the National Trust for Local News is buying up newspapers in your town, and they're going to be telling you what to think. And massive propaganda is happening in this country, and it's getting worse, not better. Let's talk about just climate and doing the same thing, looking through the climate change, which is a major push now. And they don't have much left to run on against Trump. They know the climate, Trump believes in drill baby drill, and he is vulnerable there, they think. So what you're going to see is a massive push on climate change in the media. And we're looking at it here. I mean, here's one that just takes the cake. This is I read this to my wife and just got first she just laughed, and then she was like, "What the hell is going on?" Climate change makes protecting reproductive rights a top priority. So now we have climate change and abortion all looped into one. Isn't this This is unbelievable. Climate change has detrimental impacts on sexual health. We need to make reproductive justice a fundamental right. It's tied to, I don't even have to go any further. This is just the biggest bunch of baloney and nonsense that we've seen in a long time. It's getting worse. And it's just, this is a joke. But climate change. Climate change forces responsible options for skiing. Climate change has forced greater reliance on machine made snow for Nordic skiing. We must consider its environmental impact wisely. Tell that to Mammoth Lakes out in California. They just got 10 feet of snow. I don't think they're making snow much out there. I think that's natural, but we're not talking about that. Then you've got climate driven weather causes billions in losses. Well, I hate to clue you in, but all 100%, every bit of weather is climate driven. Weather has been happening for a very long time. And the fact that there's higher losses, it really is very simple. If you build houses on the ocean and you have storms and you build houses where there are hurricanes along the coast of Florida, along the coast of the Carolinas, and the Gulf of Mexico, if you build there and you build bigger and better homes that are more expensive, then the cost of that destruction when a storm happens is going to be greater. This has nothing to do with a change in the weather over time. It has everything to do with the fact that we've built the coastlines up because oceanfront property is the most valuable out there. And this is just such crap. A new report. Climate driven weather causes billions in losses. Yeah, we know that. We can't even have an obituary without climate change anymore. Brian Mulroney, the former Prime Minister of Canada, who shook up economy, passed away. And below his picture, the caption, Brian Mulroney built ties with President Ronald Reagan as a fellow conservative, but also criticized U.S. policies and raised alarms about climate change. So he was a conservative that was smart because he raised alarms about climate change. And now it's actually destroying economies across the world. And, to tie into that whole thing with the letter to the editor about man made snow and so forth, a downhill path for the ski industry. A new study says U.S. ski areas lost about $5 billion from 2000 to 2019 as a result of human-caused climate change. Well, I hate to tell you this, but humans didn't cause climate change. And we're going to get into that more. Again, I've got a climate change podcast. It's just probably going to run a couple of hours. Brace yourself, but I have got a significant amount of material saved up to one, look at the propaganda that's being used and how it's just the same spin over and over again. They get their, you know, bite into the leg of a certain climate change thing, which, in this human caused climate change, CO2 driven. It's being debunked on a daily basis if you know where to look. And it's not just, climate deniers and political, it's scientists. Science is pushing back in a big way right now because science is catching on to what they've been doing. They've been conning us and they've been distorting data, and they haven't done good science on climate change. The temperature data is flawed. The models are completely flawed. The predictions in all of these models is completely unreliable. And the whole CO2 conversation is really not being had in a sensible way. What's kind of interesting is when, as I mentioned, they got 10 feet of snow out at Mammoth Lakes in California ski area, and all the ski areas in the Northwest. You've got Bachelor and Mount Hood, and areas up and down the West Coast have gotten dumped with feet of snow, and they've had a lot of snow all winter. So what are you talking about? The East has had a warm winter, so they've had to make snow. That's balanced out typically with the West. Colorado, they're not making snow in Colorado, it's dumping on them. They're not making snow in the Sierras, it's dumping on them. Blizzard hit Sierra Nevada with feet of snow. Tens of thousands of people in California and Nevada are without power. So we have this massive storm. There's not one mention of climate change in here. I don't understand climate change. All this snow. The article doesn't mention climate change. How can that be? It's not part of the narrative. So everything with it is all one sided. So it is just another week at the Suppress Herald, another week of propaganda. Remember, politics is local, and we're really seeing that today. We have good old Shenna Bellows got beat back by the Supreme Court 9-0, which means she should resign because she took the law into her own hands without any real basis for doing that. Biased, political, and she should resign. But you won't hear that. I did write a letter to the editor, and we'll see if that gets published. Anybody out there want to make a bet? I'd say there's a 0 chance of my letter making it into the Suppress Herald, because my letter said when you get overruled by a 9-0, in other words, the liberal justices on the Supreme Court side with the rest, and you lose 9-0, you have really screwed up and you should quit and you should leave because you have basically betrayed your oath to defend the Constitution, to do your job, and to do it correctly. Shenna Bellows is nothing but a hack. She's always been nothing but a hack, and she shouldn't be there. But we won't see that happen because the Suppress Herald will swoop in and the letters will support her, and it'll appear that no, there's only a few wackadoodle on the right that are out to get Shenna Bellows, but the reality is most people support her. That's the view that'll be shown because they'll only print one side on letters to the editor supporting Shenna Bellows, and they'll only print one article, 2 articles that'll say, well, she was right, but the Supreme Court just, they said, well, no, we can't do that. And they're out there spinning it like crazy right now on that whole thing. It's pretty funny to watch. But you're not going to see any truth telling in the Suppress Herald about any of that. So here we go. It's Super Tuesday. We are voting in Maine. I already did vote and the primary, and we're going to see how the Suppress Herald covers all this coming weeks, coming months. It's going to be an interesting ride. So that's the quick session today. Just wanted to really talk about the Russia is actually coming back and doing a reprise for the 2024 election. And it's pretty unbelievable that they're going to pull that one. But do remember, this was all done by the deep state. This was all done. The Russia was the CIA sicking their Five Eye partners overseas in their intelligence services across the globe to track, follow, spy on Trump associates, Trump campaign people, and that's how it all got started. And then the Steele dossier was born, and that's how this whole thing began. And then Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Democrats jumped on board and ran with it. But remember, it's all just come out, and you'll never read about it in the Suppress Herald or most of your local news, and you will not hear about it on NBC or ABC or MSNBC. You probably won't even hear about it on Fox. But this whole thing was created back before Trump even came down the escalator. They were already looking to make sure that they had deep state candidates on both sides of the aisle that were going to be towing the line. And then along came Trump, and that's what we've got. So, again, politics is local, and so is propaganda, and we're going to have a good ride. Spread the word. If you like what you're hearing on this podcast, tell your friends, tell your family. Let's get the word out.